Howdy, my friends. Welcome into this week's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so glad that you are here. Chris Bartlett is back, and I have some updates about some of the things that have been going on in my life and in the day-to-day ministry that we do here at Forte Catholic. And Chris has been a big part of that. He also has a game on leadership that we enjoy, maybe in the way he did not intend, but it was still enjoyable quite a bit. And then we circle back to our conversation about superstition and about how God has just been raining his blessings on me after a long desert period as we enter into this Lenten season. We released this on Fat Tuesday over on YouTube, and right as Lent starts. We hope that your Lent is going great. If you want to hang out with us over this Lenten season, please hit subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. And as I say, every year at Lent, a lot of people give up podcasts or media for Lent, but listening to this show is suffering enough, so you can still listen to Forte Catholic all through the Lenten season. Enjoy today's episode, and if not, it'll be very penitential for you. I'm very happy that you're here. Have fun. Hello there! Welcome to Forte Catholic. I'm Taylor Schroll, and that is Christopher Butch Bartlett. Hello, Christopher.
How are you, Taylor?
I am doing just okay.
Good. I'm doing pretty good, but I've got some just okay parts of my life, too.
Good. Thanks for one-upping me to start the episode.
Ba-bam!
I actually have some pretty good news in my life. Some of it, most of it, if we're being honest, most of the good things in my life are because of you. And there's one that might make you mad. That's how my life's going.
What can I say except you're welcome?
I'm so grateful to you. We've talked in the past about how, okay, long story short, I was doing about 50 to 65 church events a year, getting paid to go around and do the talkie and the singy and the MCE. I think that's how yeah, that was all correct if you were paying attention. And then COVID happened, and I did 0 of those events for about 3 years. And then I did about 5, and then I did about 12, because what happened was nobody did events for 2 years. And then whenever events came back, everybody was like, we have to get people back in large rooms again, and nobody really wants to do it. So the only way we're going to do it is if we bring Father Mike Schmitz. And they would do that, and sure enough, 3,000 people church, all completely filled up. Fantastic. That's great. But what wasn't great was for the C or D list Catholics like you and I, who no one, we're not going to bring a crowd. If you have a crowd already and you bring us in, we will do a great job. No one is coming to the church because of me and you.
Yes.
So,
and during that time, I also left my parish and came and worked for a Blaze. And I was bringing you into my parish about 4 times a year at that point, right before the pandemic.
You left your parishes and you stopped going to Mass?
No, I left my parish as the youth minister. Great
there
clarity.
You
yes, thank you. Yes.
My stupidity was on your behalf there. I had to feign stupidity in order to make you not look like a bad person.
Thank you. I appreciate
That's Forte Catholic, everybody. Taylor acting stupid to make other people look better. And that's just what I tell people so that when I'm actually stupid, it doesn't come across.
I was doing you a favor.
Exactly. So, they started coming back, but, I don't really have the network of connections anymore. Like when I worked at a Blaze, I essentially had a role where now I wasn't the president. You're the president of a Blaze now, but all of the event requests for a Blaze would come in to you now. They used to come in to or through me. So I was getting all these events from all sorts of places. And then I left, and then it's just kind of who wants Taylor? The answer was no one for about 3 years. And then I started doing a couple events, like some of the ones that essentially it was all the ones that had brought me in before. I'm not making any new waves, right? And then you got tired of sharing the gospel and making money. So you were like, look, Taylor, if you ever want to share the gospel and also make some money, I'll give you my leftovers. And I've been really appreciative of that.
Yeah, so I actually had some family stuff that I needed to attend to, and I was desperate for someone that was at my caliber. And Taylor, you're the only fool that stands as tall as I. So there we go.
So I have news for you. I am very grateful that you. So this last event that I did was a confirmation retreat that you and I have worked together multiple times. We've also shared here on this show that I'm like your third call for that, which I definitely appreciate. You have two other musicians in mind. If neither of them can do it and they can't bend over backwards to make it there, then you'll call me. And I'm also very appreciative of those times. And it's one of those times that like you and not only do we get to do ministry together, and we're both pretty good at our jobs, but when we're at this place, we're staying in the same second floor apartment. It's a very nice house, and we get to hang out. Well, this time you were doing with family stuff, so I took your role. I took the retreat leader role and all the talks and MCing and that sort of thing. And our friend Jeremy Rodriguez was the musician. He's always your first call. We've established this.
Him and I are a duo, dynamic duo. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, I've come to tell you, you're not needed anymore. We knocked that retreat out of the park. Jeremy and I, we've done events together, but never one that was like overnight, multiple days. It was more like a contract killer kind of thing. Like we came in, we killed the demons inside of the souls of these young people with me talking and him doing music. And then we'd go about our ways. So it's like, we kind of dap each other up. Hey, how are things going? Kind of small talk for 2 minutes. Jeremy and I had the conversation that you and I would have had on Friday and Saturday night. And we really got to know each other. It was a lot of fun, and I proclaimed loudly to everyone who could hear on the final day. I was like, all these people that we know in common, these people who have worked at the retreat center for years, especially the chef who you and I both love because we always gain 5 pounds. Yes. He's the best, and like I have something over you with him. He's a part of the Bald Brotherhood, as I am. So me and Paul, you might think you're close with Paul. No one can get as close as Paul as me. Maybe his wife, but me. Because of the Bald Brotherhood and the Catholicness, he made me like 24 cookies to bring home to my kids whenever we left. And I just want to tell you, you're not needed anymore. I was proclaiming to everyone that I was way better than Chris, and Jeremy was way better than me. Me and Jeremy is a way better combination than you and me.
I'm happy and it hurts.
That's what
You're breaking
intended.
Me, man.
That's what
I got intended. That picture. You texted me. You and Jeremy texted me from the events, and it was in the evening when there's just a little bit of brotherhood time, and that's honestly one of my favorite parts. I will say God has been moving at those retreats in some powerful ways, and that's been my favorite part. But I get this text message from the two of you in the upper room, our housing area, and just ear-to-ear smiles and just kind of this thumbs up. Things are going great. I didn't know that it meant things are going great. Subtext, you can die now.
Right.
Like that's basically what you were saying.
You don't have to die. Just stay away. We got it, man. We got it.
Stay away. We got this.
I know that y'all did a retreat together the next weekend. Like 5 days after we left, Jeremy returned. He left all his stuff there, and then you returned. I promise you it didn't go as good. I promise you it did not go as well as ours did.
The weekend before, Jeremy and I did a retreat as well. So he did 3 confirmation retreats consecutive weekends in a row, which I think is insane. But okay, well, I would say they're going pretty well. So if it didn't go as well as ours did this last weekend, that means it was one of the greatest confirmation retreats in the history of confirmation retreats.
I think it was. I think we can stand on that. We stand on business here at the Forte Catholic / Jeremy Rodriguez Foundation.
At open mic sharing, this girl gets up at this last weekend and she just shares about how she was so grateful she didn't take her life 3 years earlier when she was going through a hard time, because then she wouldn't have been able to be on the retreat to experience God's love and to build the friendships that she did. Everyone was crying. I mean, everyone, like all the guys wearing their hoodies are just kind of looking down. All the adult chaperones were just in their tears. And after mass, she comes up to me and she just says, "Hey, your talk really moved me this weekend. Can I give you a hug?" And so I'm like, of course. I give her a hug, and she cries like a puddle onto my shoulder. And I just walked away feeling so humbled by that whole experience. You know what I mean? And it's crazy. And I know we're talking about, it's good because you and Jeremy are a dynamic duo and different things like that. But it's weird that we get to be at the front lines of how God works in these teens' lives. Because if you know Taylor, if you know Jeremy, if you know me, like we're just a couple of schmucks that are willing to stand behind a microphone, but it's God that does the work. And so I'm glad that you guys were able to to do that in a powerful way because you were doing my role. In the past, you've just done Jeremy's role, and I'm the type A guy, kind of get things organized and things like that. And two musicians leading a retreat makes me nervous about, like, will they remember to stop so that they can break into small groups or eat lunch or whatever? But you also have some of those organizational leadership tendencies that the creative types tend to lack.
So two things. One, you really shut me down there. I was because nothing that I could say won't get me in trouble in response to your fear. All I could think of was jokes that would make the audience angry. So I'm just gonna let you have that one. I think I was winning until you brought real feelings into it, and you really crushed the character that I was creating for myself there, because I don't. If you're watching on video, you just watch big grins come across my face the whole time that you were talking in that last little spot there, and you'll never know what I was thinking while I was grinning, because I have learned to keep those kinds of things to myself. On the second thing, it is funny that you see me as a musician, because you've only been the leader of an organization for a year. I've been doing this a while, my guy. I've been leading retreats by myself for a very long time. I am way more type A than you probably think I am. I get to be the lousy smuck, because all I have to do at your retreats is give a talk that I've given 87 times and play the same 8 songs that I've played 8 billion times, and it's so easy. I'm actually better walking into a room and taking over. So if you haven't seen me do that. Actually, the one time you did see me do that, you complimented me on it.
I love the fact that you just used the code word, my guy. That's your way of being like, hey, my guy, like, hey, dummy. Like, I can't say the full phrase of what that actually means, right. But like, you're not afraid to insult your co-host. And then in that time, you're like, hey, my guy, come here, little buddy. Let me teach you something. I'm like, that almost hurts worse than some of the names you give me at the start of the show, man. That cut. So there you go.
Good. Aren't you glad that you're back?
It's good to see you. And I did miss hanging out with y'all this last retreat. Yes, I'm back.
And what you're telling me is there's a reason that we haven't had an episode in a month. You were the last episode we released. Nobody else wants to talk to me.
Are you serious? I was the last episode? No way.
Father Anthony's entire parish died. All he's done is funerals for the last month. And I was a beautiful type A person, and I actually scheduled 2 other interviews, and both of them flaked. So there was no episode the last 4 weeks.
That hurts, man. That hurts.
I did all the planning, and then they canceled multiple times. So I'm just like, I give up. I'll see Chris next month.
Hold on. I have the best episode to fill the next gap that you have. So we just showed my kids Mrs. Doubtfire. And not all of them, whatever, it doesn't matter. That movie, I think, is excellent.
Way more relevant today than it was when it came out.
Okay, so it's actually a little bit weirder today. But what if you and Taylor Doubtfire were co-hosts, and you just kept going from one voice to another? I mean, you should give it a shot. I would watch that. That'd boost your YouTube ratings.
Here's the thing. I have had this idea for years, and there's 2 reasons that I haven't done it. 1, it's a lot of work. 2, the reason I've wanted to play the angel and devil character of me multiple times on the show, and I'm scared that the audience will like the devil version of me more. That's what I'm afraid of. It has been in my little Trello, how I plan my entire life. It's been called Battle of the Mind Experience, and it's essentially like from Emperor's New Groove, where the angel and demon version of Gronk shows. I wanted to play those 2 people, and I was very worried that everyone likes the bad side of me more than they like the nice side of me.
I hope we never find out.
Well, I think most people listening recently would be like, we've only heard the bad side, and we're still here.
I think everyone sees your heart. The last time I was on, which actually was the last episode you released,
correct,
come to find out,
yeah,
was you showed your heart. You cried or teared up.
Yeah, nobody listened to that one. Nobody cared.
I care.
I'm glad you care. Okay, now that I finished the banter about that retreat that I filled you in on, I can actually share some real things. So, a couple of funny things happen. 1, we did send you that video, and Jeremy's son. Jeremy works at the school where I coach. He coaches baseball at our biggest rival. They knocked our baseball team out of the playoffs last year and ended up going on to win state.
Yep.
and I despise them. So it's actually very funny. One of the talks that I give, I talk about how we're supposed to love our enemies and love our neighbors, and I tell a story about how my actual next door neighbor has been pissing me off a lot recently. I think you and I talked about this on the show, and
Yes.
I went outside and I yelled at him, and now I'm going to give a good talk all the time about loving your neighbors. I'm like, it's actually kind of challenging. Oftentimes we're like, that means everybody. I'm like, yeah, but it starts with homeboy. He starts with my guy next door, right? So
that's right, my
guy. The other one is loving our enemies. So I got to point at Jeremy and say, that is my enemy. I don't like him and anything that he stands for, and yet we're doing a great job together.
He's the head coach now.
I know.
Yeah, and so exciting. Like he is not just your enemy, but he's the head of the very snake. Yeah. It's crazy.
So my superstar athlete, who is a senior this year, right as we're starting track season, if he stays healthy and isn't a numbskull, he should be the athlete of the meet, the best athlete at our 2A TAPS Texas track meet in early May. There's one single person that has given him a run for his money. Actually, there's two, but one really giving him a run for his money this year in the long and triple jump. And it was Jeremy Rodriguez's son. So, like, legitimately, the main person we're competing against is his son. And so it was just very, very funny to, like, spend great time with Jeremy, actually get to know him. Like, you and I have had some very deep conversations that, like, we wouldn't share publicly.
Yeah.
Because you and I have been friends for a decade, and we've gotten pretty close. You're actually one of my closest friends. Jeremy and I know of each other, and I think a lot of it was just, like, the trust that I have with you and he has with you. It was kind of there, right? Yep. And we talked about some stuff that we also wouldn't talk about publicly there. It was just a really cool brotherhood.
Praise God for that. Awesome.
And then the other thing that happened is Jeremy is Hispanic, but he's Hispanic like my wife is Hispanic, meaning I know more Spanish than they do. So this retreat that we were doing was 2 parishes. Typically, when you and I do these retreats together, it's like 5 kids from 5 to 8 parishes equaling up to 75, 80 kids, whatever it is. Right. This one was 2 parishes. One, pretty typical parish, like, typical Austin parish of like mostly white, mostly affluent. All the adults are white, affluent. A few Asian, a few Hispanic, a couple black, but mostly white. The other parish, 100% Hispanic. And what I learned pretty quickly, because you were so worried that I couldn't lead an adult meeting, and you taught me how to do it. Cute, very, very cute. So I went and led the adult meeting. And as I'm sharing all of these things, I'm realizing very quickly that half of the adults in the room don't understand a word that I'm saying. I'm like, okay. So the leader of that from that parish was, I learned pretty quickly, very fluent and very comfortable translating, which is it's a hard skill, right? Even if you know 2 languages, doesn't mean that you can translate. And like, she knows not only English and Spanish, but she's thinking fast enough to be able to translate. And also she knows the Catholic stuff very well. So she could even translate I'm not talking about, where is your library? I'm talking about, the Eucharist and confession and all these sorts of things, right? So she starts translating for the adults. And one thing that was really cool, why don't you explain the activity that you have the adults do right after that adult meeting on these retreats?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the retreat, because it's multi-parish, they haven't met all the adults. Like, these are the people that are meant to journey with you. And this is kind of our way of introducing them. So we have them on a sheet of paper, complete the statement, I believe blank. So I believe in
that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win.
So, no, but they write down, like, Jeremy says, I believe in music. I believe in the power of music. And he gives just a little 1-sentence thing about how that connects to God. Or I believe in joy, and it's an analogy for Jesus, others, you. When you have your life in that way, you'll experience the fullness of the gospel, fullness of life. Some people say, I believe in forgiveness. I believe in mercy, whatever it is. But they just simply stand up, hold up that sheet. Hi, my name is, Justin, and I'm from
Tick a Slim Shady.
And I'm from that parish or whatever, and then they share it. But it's a real easy way to get them involved in, like, you're doing ministry right now, because some of them come thinking they're just chaperones. But then it creates a really nice skit. By the end of it, there's all these adults standing around the room that are kind of like, these are the people, look around, these are the people that are meant to love you and journey with you, and we believe in you. So that's the skit.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. And I think over the course of the weekend, this is probably the best group of adults that I didn't know coming together and like leading these kids. It's like, yeah, Jeremy and I were doing the talks and the music, but they were not just chaperones. They were diving into stuff in small groups and encouraging them to share and all these sorts of things. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But when I realized that, like, if they don't understand me, like, I'm loud and I tend to talk slow unless I'm excited, and I'm not like going crazy in a parent or an adult meeting, right? So I was like, look, they were struggling writing in English, and then they were essentially like getting help from the translator of like, how am I going to say this? I'm like, no. I realized it after about 2-3 minutes. Like, no. Do it in Spanish.
Yep.
Do it in Spanish, right? So it was really cool to see some of them like wanted to do it in English, perfectly fine. They go up and they do it kind of in broken English, also beautiful. And then some of them went up and they did the whole I believe in whatever fully in Spanish. So we finished and they're holding these papers and they had just said on the microphone all these different things in 2 different languages. And we're literally talking about Pentecost later in the day. Like just perfect, man. Just perfect how it ended up. And that was kind of the setup for one of the cooler moments I've ever had in ministry. And it's because I didn't do much. I think those are always the cool moments in ministry. It's like I work really hard, things are done. I like don't really even try anything, and it actually goes really well. So at the end of Mass, well, let me back up. Funny story before the deep moment. We're setting up for Mass, and most of the parishes that we've worked with in the past, like it's a camp. It's not like crazy expensive, but it's not cheap either, right? So typically it does happen to be like the middle class parishes or the affluent parishes that are coming to these things. At least that's been my experience.
Right.
Or these small country towns that have one oil and gas donor that pays for the whole thing. You know, like those are kind of the things that happen. So typically they invite the parents to come out and pick them up, but also like, you know, parents come out and join us for the closing Mass. So there was about 75 to 80 people with us on the retreat, both students and the adult leaders. And they're setting up for Mass, and they're like, okay, let's, you know, when we were setting up chairs, but also finding hosts, like for communion, they're like, well, let's plan for about 125. And I'm like, whoa. There is no way. But because typically when we do it, if we have about 75 kids, there will be about 125 because, you know, it's just one parent's going to come to Mass, pick up the kids. They're probably going to carpool. But I've been the minority at a lot of parishes that I've been in. I've been the lone white guy with a bunch of Hispanics. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to be enough. It's not going to be close. So we set up all the chairs we had in the building. We went and got all the chairs from the chapel up on the hill, which is like another 100 chairs.
Yes.
And by the time Mass started / about 10 minutes in, there was about 50 people standing room only in the back. We were no longer in the big room. There's like the big room and then a hallway and then another hallway to the right that goes to the bathroom. There were people there. Like this Hispanic, the entire community from this small little town, the entire community came. Mom, grandma, tia, tio, all the grandparents, all the cousins, everybody came. So then, like, there were no, I never know how to talk about this appropriately, but there were no quote unquote regular size hosts, like the single serving of Jesus is what I'm talking about, right? There were none of those at our campsite. I went to the other campsite to go raid their closet, and there were only about 100 or so that we could take because they also were having Mass for their retreat, and they had about 100 people. So I left them with 100. I took 100. So now we have 350, 400 people. But at the same time, in the Hispanic community, a lot of them tend to not come up and receive communion. So it was very difficult to prepare chairs. And I was like, guys, you don't understand. And the crazy thing is I was right in that, like, we needed way more chairs and it was going to be standing room only. But I was also wrong in that we ended up getting a bunch of medium size and very large size hosts that Father could consecrate, and then we could break those up into smaller pieces and give those to people. We had way more of the single hosts left over because almost nobody came and got communion. It was just the funniest cultural thing that I've ever seen in my life. I was like, I was very right and also very wrong.
Very wrong. Wow.
It was pretty incredible. So the cool part was after Mass. So, you know, I would say the community for the retreat was about half and half white, half Hispanic, but there was only about 4 or 5 of the adults that couldn't understand most of what I was saying, right? So there's only about 4 or 5 people out of 80, and it was the adults. So like, we're not going to change everything on account of, 1%
Sure.
or 2% of the population. Once everybody arrived for Mass,
it was a 50-50 split.
No. I was by far the minority. English speaking white was by far the minority. So during Mass, father, large white guy, says Mass in English. It is what it is, right? Jeremy, to his credit, did all of the bilingual songs that he knew, even though he doesn't speak Spanish. He can sing in Spanish. Heck, I can sing in Spanish because I've been in parishes where I was the minority before, right?
Yes. Yep.
Although in this case, I'm glad that he did it because he at least looks the part. So at the end of Mass, I'm going to do what you typically do at the end of Mass. Announcements and also just kind of a recap of the weekend for the parents. I think typically you do it before Mass. We were still setting up 400 chairs because it took an hour. So I did it after Mass, and with no prep whatsoever, because I thought about it during Mass. I looked the lady in the eyes who had been our translator throughout the weekend, and I said, "Can you come and translate?" Exactly. And she said, she popped up, she's smiling, she's like, super excited or whatever. And so I give her a mic, I have a mic, I do 2 sentences at a time. And she's translating back and forth, and you can see it's just really funny the smiles that I'm getting. I'm getting a smile from all the white people as I speak, and then she's getting a smile that I created 30 seconds later from all the Spanish speaking community. And
that's a new drug, man. That's a new drug. Yeah, the delayed gratification.
Yeah, the best moment, the single best moment. I love this woman to death. She's the best. At one point, I'm saying something to the effect of, when your kids got here Saturday morning, it was pretty rough. They were all gruff and grumpy. And for those of you just listening on podcasts, I'm crossing my arms and doing the pouting thing. I don't want to be here. God is stupid, and I'd rather be playing video games and sleeping. I'm doing that and explaining that and saying, like, by the end of Saturday, they were opening up. We had 75 kids go to confession with 2 priests, like our pre-sacrifice. I'm doing all this stuff. And she does the translation, and in Spanish, she's going, doing what I did. It's just one of the best moments I've ever had in ministry because of that woman.
Yes.
It was so much fun. So much fun.
And there's something that happens by that second day of the retreat, that Sunday morning, where people just feel invincible, to where that woman can get up and just like, oh, we're doing some improv. I'm in. It's just the Holy Spirit's so enriched in those moments. So awesome.
It was really, really cool. So I mentioned that there have been a lot of events popping up, and I think I mentioned to you, I can never really remember what I talked to you about off the air, what I talked about on the air, but long story short, and if you've been listening for the last few months, money's been very tight, both for Forte Catholic and for Taylor Schroll and the Schroll family. So money has been very tight, and that's one of the reasons that I told you this, and you were like, here's some events. And you did the, here, buddy, and you tapped me on the head, and you said, here's an event and some money. And I was like, I very appreciate it, right? But essentially, my prayers felt unheard, other than the fact that you were doing it. And when you do it, it's like, I don't know if this is God or if it's you, because you're a really good person and you're a very generous friend. So I'm like, can we really give God the credit when Chris did it? I don't know.
Stop.
That sort of thing. But there's another event that you weren't available for, and it was kind of half you, and then the other half was definitely God. So we can at least give him some credit here. And so, but essentially, my prayer is like, look, God, I need an influx of events. I need an influx of work. I need an influx of money. Otherwise, I can't do this anymore. Like, that's essentially where I've been at for the last few months. It's like,
have you considered just saying, God, send Chris more work than he can handle?
Right. Yeah. I haven't worded it that way, but that's how it's been playing out.
That feels like it. Yeah. Okay, good.
Dear God, please make Chris incredibly stressed out so that he has to give things up.
Get things off my plate.
Maybe if a scandal, Lord, give Chris a scandal so I get all of his work. So that's essentially been my prayer, and it's been essentially desperation of just like, look, I literally can't afford to keep living the way that, the way that things have been going, and it just kind of feels defeating, honestly, because as I mentioned earlier, before COVID, I was doing 50 to 65 events a year, and the last 2 or 3 years, I've been doing 10 to 18 a year, and it's just like, both just like, I feel like I'm good at this, I feel like unfulfilled, in like, I feel like I'm really good at this, I'm not getting the opportunities for it, maybe it's a sign, and I need that money to live, and we're not getting it. So it's just been financially a difficult few years, and you have helped a lot in that. And one of these events ironically enough, is an old friend of mine. You got asked to do a parish mission for an event for a parish up in Dallas, and you couldn't do it because I think you were double booked or something like that. And you connected him with me. Ironically enough, I say kid. We were kids when we met. We were like 18, 19 when we met because I was doing a mission trip down in the valley in Texas. He was at the parish at the valley. We started doing mission work together. He ended up coming out for years and years and years to join us for the talks and worship and stuff at night, and ended up coming helping out. It's just, one of those teenage friendships that has turned into an adult friendship. So we got that all worked out, and it's all of those things. It's an event I needed. It's money I needed. It's all, all that kind of stuff. And then after I had the conversation with him to get that all squared away, he talks to his boss, who's a deacon. He's like the head of all faith formation for the parish. And that deacon's like, we also have a staff day of reflection that same week. Do you want to come lead that? And I'm like, yes, I would. So I'm doing 2 events, one from you and one from the Lord.
Are you staying up there just the whole time, or are you driving back home in between?
I'm not. So it's we're actually leaving. We are recording this in real time. I am leaving. I have a track meet Friday night. I will drive from the track meet with my wife, which is a huge blessing. She never gets to travel with me whenever we do these things, but my kids are going to my parents for spring break. It's all working out. My wife and I are going to go stay at this hotel right next to the parish for 3 nights for this 2-day mission. Beautiful that she gets to come hang out with me. We're going to spend some time. It's like just good on all levels, right? We're going to drive up Friday night, stay the night, do the parish mission Saturday, do their youth night, 2 youth nights on Sunday. Monday morning, we'll drive back because we have to go get the kids the next day. I'll drive back up Thursday night, do the staff day reflection Friday, and then come back. So I have a great week next week planned, and it's mostly because of you and also because of God. So thanks, everybody.
Awesome. And you'll do great too. God will be doing amazing things for your ministry. That's great.
I sure hope so. So I essentially, this is a long list of all the things that have been giving me hope recently. Another one was an event that I got all without your help. I did it all by myself. Diocese of Fort Worth, I had done an event for them a few years ago, and they asked me last year if I could do it, and I had to say no because we had a really big track meet that day, and it's devastating for me to say no because because of the situation I'm in, I cannot say no to stuff like this.
Right.
And I always think that if I say no, they're not going to ask me again, right? So they asked me again. I do this event, and just because of how things happened, I filled in some gaps that day. So they were like a lot of times I never know how people feel about me. They make it really known if it's bad, and then sometimes, but they never really know if it's good. They were like profusely thanking me because they were. Just
love it. You walked in as a good speaker. You walked away a hero.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's awesome. That's so good when you're like, no, I over delivered and I feel good about it, and you feel great about it. Yeah, right. Praise God.
So they were all. This was the junior high or like middle school diocesan rally, right? So this also never happens. She said, "Hey." In the hero conversation at the end of the day, she was like, we also just started a diocesan high school confirmation retreat. It's in 3 weeks. Do you want to come MC and do the music for it? I'm like, yes, I would. So again, another large event for a big organization and good money that I really needed. And it's like, thanks, God. I really appreciate it. Right.
Yeah.
I also just got a call 2 weeks ago that the biggest and best Catholic summer camp, I'm going to lead a week of speaking out there. I mentioned earlier how excited I was that my wife gets to come with me to spend some time together in Dallas. I'm going to speak at the Pines up in Northeast Texas this summer for a week of their summer camp. And my oldest son gets to come with camp with me. I've always heard of fancy speakers getting to do this. I've never been fancy enough to get paid, and my kid gets to do something cool. It's just overflowing.
You're the fancy speaker, Taylor. I know you've been wanting that type of a gig for a long time.
A very long time.
That's so cool. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. And then the last one is, I talked about this one last year, but the mission trip that I went on last year, I talked about on the show. We actually recorded live from New Mexico, from the Indian Reservation right outside of Albuquerque. It's from a parish in Houston. This is their 10th year going to this mission trip staying at the same church, staying at the same place, and serving this, very, very poor, very small Catholic community in Laguna, New Mexico. They invited me back, which again, it's like sometimes you don't get invited back and you don't know how they think about you. They're like, no, like you're part of the crew now. Like you're coming every year. And I'm like, I love it. Right. And it's their 10th year. And not only am I coming back, they're increasing the stipend, which is awesome. Yeah. And also they were like, we want to do a big project for 10 years. This youth minister and a lot of his adults have been going for 10 years. The kids obviously haven't been going for 10 years, but like their siblings went to the first one and now they're going, right? And he asked me, he's like, hey, I need to brainstorm what we need to do as a big project for year 10. And he's like, I can't think of anything. I was like, well, the rosary has decades. What if we built like a rosary garden? That's the big project that they're doing, is building this beautiful rosary garden in this courtyard of the church. My idea. Like, I'm part of the crew now. This is awesome.
Your family. Yeah, it's like a Vin Diesel, Fast and the Furious type of moment. And you're the bald guy.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking main man of the mafia. Yours makes more sense. Yeah. Okay, very good. All right. That is that. I don't know, man. Like, it doesn't solve all of our problems. It's a lot of it is like, it's a shot of insulin for like my ego, my pride, and like in a healthy way, because it was pretty shot. So like, typically I don't need help there, but it's just like, man, if nobody's calling or emailing, it does take a little shot to the ego, right? And just like, is this what God's calling me to? Because it doesn't seem to be being blessed. And in the last few weeks, it feels like it is very blessed. And it doesn't solve all of our issues. It's a drop in the bucket to help pay for some of the debts and stuff we've accrued over the last few years, but it's positive momentum, and I'm feeling a lot better right now than I was, 1 to 158 weeks ago.
Yeah. And friends, on behalf of Forte Catholic, please donate on a monthly basis. It helps Taylor. He's already lost his hair, but he was losing his mind for a while. Just because he's got a couple of wins that he shared doesn't mean that you can't still be a part of that W. And so there you go.
Yeah, fortecatholic.com/donate. I promise you, we still need all the help that we can get. I promise.
I know. You're like, hey, I just got a high five. It's like, but it was from a withered hand. I'm still hungry, people, and my kids are still hungry. Yeah, exactly.
You said you have a game about leadership.
I do. I have a leadership game.
I don't know anything about this. I'm intrigued to find out what we're doing.
I wish it was like one of those podcast things where it's like, hey, here's 4 different things, and which leadership person profile are you? But it's not. It's way more simple, and it's there's 7 leadership quotes, and these quotes come from either a pope, and to be specific, it's either Pope Francis or JP2. So it's not like Pope Benedict IV, and you're like, I don't know. So it's a pope that you would know. A pope quote. It's either from a pope, John F. Kennedy, or Adolf Hitler.
Oh my gosh, I didn't say a lot of things earlier in the show to not get myself in trouble, and you're like, I got you later. It'll be fine.
Bam. So there you go. And listeners, you can play along as well. Just keep track. And again, you can just, number 1 will be a Pope, number 2, Kennedy, number 3, Hitler. And just keep in mind which ones you think and how many you score in each category. And I'll let you know at the end. So the first one is this quote.
I have a question before we begin.
Yes.
Because I watch TikTok. Is the answer going to be Hitler every time?
It is. Yes, it is. And this is the mind-blowing thing.
Is it really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
No. Did I just ruin the game?
Yeah, you did just ruin the game.
I don't want to play if it's Hitler every time.
It is, but every single one of these quotes sound like it could come from a pope. It sounds, never deprive someone of hope. It may be all they have. Tell me that doesn't sound like Pope Francis.
Yeah, you can't have hope if you're dead.
Yes. Okay. What?
I don't know if I want to explain. Please continue.
Here's one. God is not moved or impressed with our worship until our hearts are moved and impressed by him. That sounds like a pope.
Yeah.
Right?
I was properly terrified of this game.
Here's another one. People may not always believe what you say, but they will believe what you believe. Sounds like JFK.
Wait, say it again.
People may not always believe what you say, but they will believe what you do.
JFK.
Right. No, it's Hitler. Still Hitler. All these are Hitler. When you are in light, everything will follow you. But when you enter dark, even your own shadow will not follow you.
Luke chapter 2, verse 14.
It feels like it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then here's one that sounds like JFK. For there is one thing we must never forget. The majority can never replace the man.
Can you do that? Can you do that in a JFK accent?
Sure. My fellow Americans, for there is one thing we must never forget. The majority can never replace the man. Maybe a little Nixon mixed in there. I'm not a crook.
I'm not a crook. But Francis.
So the point is that all these things are great. They're just great. And again, my last name is Bartlett. There's the famous Bartlett book of quotes. And so when I was in high school and college, I got really into looking up amazing and inspirational quotes. And I was shocked to see that some of the people that gave some of the greatest quotes also had committed atrocities. And as we enter into, or as we are in the season of Lent, like I think about it, because it's like we all have the capacity to be a saint or a Hitler. And I know that there's a lot of choices in between, but I get the sense from these quotes that are here that all came from Adolf Hitler, that there was a goodness in him that he chose to ignore or didn't cultivate. And I think that's what the season of Lent offers us, is a season to cultivate the good and to really starve out the bad. And you know, they say, you know, you feed one thing or you feed the other. And this is back to your Gronk. Was it Emperor's New Clothes? What was the name?
Emperor's New Clothes. Yep.
Emperor's New Groove. What?
There you go. Please keep doing your hands like that.
Yeah, but he had the devil on one side and the angel on the other. It's like, which one are you going to feed?
It's really hard to do a puppet show on a podcast.
Which one are you going to feed? Hey, son. Yeah,
now
absolutely.
you need to do a puppet show of JFK talking to Hitler, but it's only using Hitler quotes. But you have to change the accent and do the German yelling and JFK, but it's all Hitler quotes.
That'll be for another time. I don't want there to be a video or audio of me imitating Hitler.
That's the same video that I haven't made for years because it's what I'm terrified of people thinking about me.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, there's a meaningful point to this, and it goes back to kind of the leadership principle. It's like, Taylor, no one can argue that JFK wasn't a good leader. He was a good leader. But here's the scary thing. So was Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler
I think he's one of the most effective leaders of all time. And one of the worst people.
Exactly. And the terrifying reality is this, and I think we should be haunted by the same thing. What if that leadership, what if that giftingness could have been used solely for good? Right? Like, I think about that when I get frustrated with my kids and I'm like, I didn't lead them in the right way. And sometimes it's, I didn't lead them in the right way 6 months ago, and now it's coming out sideways or whatever. But like, I wonder if everything I did was made totally good, how much further along, not just me or my family would be, but our society, if I just only cultivated the good. And I think that's what this season of Lent offers us, the opportunity to starve out the bad and cultivate the good. And it takes time, which is why Lent is, 7 weeks long and different things like that. Like, how do we do that so that if we are quoted in the future, people aren't shocked? Oh, that came from Taylor. He was such a monster. How could he have said such a nice thing back in the day or whatever? So those are my thoughts on leadership.
Do you remember the first reading for Mass this past weekend?
No, I don't.
So let me pull it up. I was terrified as this reading was being read at Mass this past Sunday. So I click backwards. This is yesterday. When a sieve is shaken, the husks appear. So do one's fault when one speaks. As the test of what the potter molds is in the furnace, so in tribulation is the test of the just. The fruit of a tree shows the care it has had. So too does one's speech disclose the bent of one's mind. Praise no one before he speaks, for it is then that people are tested. There are hundreds of hours of me talking. There's probably 3 hours that are positive and good and can't be taken out of context and are all great. There are hundreds of others that I'm terrified whenever our lector went up and said, a reading from the book of Sirach. I go, uh-oh. I have proven my stupidity and my unholiness over and over again simply by opening my mouth. It says a little bit later that, like, if you want to look holy and smart, shut up. And I'm just like, whoops.
And in Proverbs, it says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the overflow of the heart. And so if you look stupid when you open your mouth, then your heart is overflowing in a way that isn't properly attuned to the Lord.
My heart's dumb. It doesn't have a brain.
If I only had a heart that had a brain. So
I don't know what that is.
That was, don't you remember If I Only Had a Brain?
No.
It's the Scarecrow.
I've never seen it. I've watched Wicked.
Oh my gosh, you haven't seen The Wizard of Oz?
And you haven't listened to this show because I've talked about that quite a bit. You say you're the best listener, but I think JP Quinn is now.
I was pretty locked in on Sound of Music. That was the atrocity. So
hey,
you haven't, and there you go. That's not how they said it back in the day. So you better be careful by saying, "Hey, Hitler." They weren't going, "Hey." Okay, moving along. Let's shift back to Earth and back to reality.
Oh, there goes gravity. That's our second reference to Eminem today.
It's almost Fat Tuesday over here, so we can talk about M&Ms. But
still Fat Monday for one of us.
Every Monday's Fat Monday. Okay. So, but I think sometimes we set this bar that we need to be Father Mike Schmidt or we need to be a martyr. But sainthood actually looks a lot simpler than I think a lot of people sometimes tend to make it. And so I just wanted to close the leadership section with this story. There's this grandma, and she's at home taking care of her grandson.
Is the grandma
Billy.
Hitler?
No. This is way more straightforward. It's not
Hitler.
No one is Hitler in this story. There are a total of 0 Hitlers in this story. So there they are with the man in the high castle, and their grandma's taking care of Billy, and it's time to get him to school, right? And so the school bus pulls up in front of Billy's house because, I don't know, they live in a small town or something like that. And he opens the door to go get on the school bus. And as he opens the door, his dog Lucky goes shooting across to the field across the street from their house. And so what does Billy do? Billy goes and starts chasing after Lucky. Lucky, Billy's running. Lucky stops, looks at Billy. Billy takes another 2 steps forward, and then Lucky shoots off again like it's a game of cat and mouse, right? And so the grandma sees this and sees the bus driver kind of like, is he coming or not? And so she starts from the front porch. She opens the front door and says, Billy, come home. Billy, come home. And Billy looks, and grandma gives him the ojos, says, Billy, come home right now. And so Billy turns, sees grandma, and recognizes he's about to get a whooping. And so he starts running home. And as he's running home, the dog Lucky sees Billy running. And what does Lucky do?
He bites Hitler?
Lucky turns into Hitler. No, Lucky starts chasing Billy now. And Billy runs to the front porch, and in goes Billy, and in goes Lucky. And then grandma shuts the door. Lucky's now in the house. And then she says, okay, Billy, go to school. And then Billy goes out the front door and goes to school. The thing is in the most authentic form of discipleship, which I think domestic churches or families really need to embrace, is that it's not the amount of chasing that we can effectively do, but the beauty of our voice as we call people home. That's what authentic leadership is calling people home, because leadership call people. It's where they're calling them to, which is the most authentic thing. And calling them home to the domestic church, the family, ultimately calls them home to the Catholic Church, which ultimately calls them home to their heavenly church, which is, or their heavenly home, which is heaven. And so that's it. It's a lot simpler than that. How can we be a voice of people to those that are lost, chasing after other things, to simply say, come home. Just come home, Billy.
I took the wrong lesson from that story. I thought you were going to say that Billy was the hero, but ultimately it was grandma that was the hero. I thought the whole time, and I still do, that the actual hero in this story is the bus driver. There's no bus driver that patient, and I need to emulate him more. I'm not ready to be the grandma yet, but I can be the bus driver in this Lenten season.
I love it. And that's a step forward, because at least you're out front of the domestic church, making sure that your neighbors don't park on that spot.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. This is an illegal parking zone.
Like that. The real reason why Taylor wants a school bus is so he can park it in front of his neighbor's home.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I have a perfect way to segue, because I had a segue out of my segment, and now you have a segue out of your segment, and they're both going to segue perfectly into our final little discussion here. I was ending my segment talking about the blessings that are coming into my life. You ended your segment with a vehicle. Hitler's not going to be involved. I can promise you, if we're done with him. I was like, is the bus driver Hitler? No, he was the hero. No one was Hitler, and I was very confused. Also, I think it's very funny that you ruined my first playful segment of screwing with you, and then you were like, well, I made a girl cry. And I'm like, okay, you win. It's fine, right? But then I ruined your segment by knowing exactly what the answers were.
Death to rights.
That was so funny. So here's the last thing. I would like to make a final proclamation in the saga of whether or not we should bury St. Joseph in front of our home. I have a final declaration to make. I have said multiple times on this show, 2 separate times, I said that I feel like that's superstition, and I can't do it because I'm a real Catholic, and the superstition of burying St. Joseph, nevertheless upside down, to sell our house feels like superstition and mean to a saint, and I'm not going to do it. And then I talked myself into it because of money stuff, and I was desperate to sell my house. I said one time, I'm going to do it. Then I said another time, I can't do it. And then I said another time, finally I'm going to do it because our house isn't selling. Well, here marks the 1-year anniversary of putting our house on the market. It did not sell. We pulled it off the market. I never buried St. Joseph. Final update.
There was a season in there in the middle where you were like, I'm threatening to do it. St. Joseph, if you don't want to be buried, you better get to work. Like there was a moment where you were kind of threatening to bully the saint into selling your home. So you guys made that decision. It's a hard decision.
Being holy didn't work, is what I'm trying to say.
Yet another thing, reading from the book of Sirach. Okay,
exactly.
Good. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So we pulled the house off the market. One of the reasons being, no one wanted it. That's the primary reason. And it wasn't getting sold. It's all a very frustrating situation, and honestly led to a lot of the hope leaving my life, like having to come into this house every day and see the for sale sign and having no forward progress whatsoever. No forward progress in a year is just difficult, right? So we pulled it off the market. The sign's gone. We've made a decision to live here for quite some time. One of the reasons being is we just see all the things coming down the road. Not only are we struggling financially now, but we also see that like eventually, like both of the cars that we have now are one's going to be replaced like ASAP. Like we're essentially like doing one of those things, like we're going to drive it till it stops going and park it on the side of the road and get an Uber home. And the other one's like, not anytime soon, but it's like it's been in and out of the shop the last couple of months. So it's just like, we're kind of getting there. Both older cars. One of the cars was donated to us very generously, actually, about 2017, 2018, around that time. Somebody donated it to us. We did it through a Blaze where you work, and then so that it could be a donation, and then it was gifted over to us. And it's it's a very generous gift. And like there's no way we would have been able to. This is right when we had Felicity, so it was 7 years ago, whatever that was, 2018, yeah, maybe 2017 because it was right before. Anyway. We would not have been able to have, we had 3 car seats at the time. Huge blessing. And those, the family that gave us the van has continued to be large donors of Forte Catholic. Like they're one of the big reasons that we've been able to do things for the last 8 years here through thick and thin. Just incredible, right? The van's getting old. And so we need to get a new one. And like, we just cannot afford it. We just cannot afford a new vehicle. So I would like to talk about.
To be clear, it's a new to you vehicle. It's not like you're looking at 2025s, you're like, hey, what about a 2016, a 2017, something that'll last us till at least one of the kids is out of the house. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the cars that we have now are a 2009 and a 2010. And so they're getting older. And the last car that I had I literally drove it until it couldn't drive anymore. I drove out of our athletic complex. The engine died. I left it on the side of the road, and they came and picked it up for $250. Kelley Blue Book said that a working car in that condition was worth $125. It was worth double dead than it was alive. So left it on the side of the road, got the car that we have now with some help from my parents. But we're kind of at that point again. Like, we've had these cars for a while, and they're, they got 200,000 miles on them. It's like, they're rattling. The door doesn't open. All this stuff's kind of starting to happen, right? So in the midst of all this lack of hope and good things happening, like all the events that I talked about earlier, my wife gets a text because over the last couple of weeks, we have been, for different reasons, we've been a one-car family a lot. It wasn't for an extended period of time, but multiple days. We have all kinds of, I work, I have fun things to do. She works, she has fun things to do. Our kids have school and fun things to do. And like coordinating the family in two different cars going multiple places was just very difficult, especially when like my car was in the shop for a few days, her car was in the shop for a few days. So we were having to coordinate and all this stuff, right? My wife gets a text the other day. Here's the thing. Before I continue the story, I realized something very strange about myself. I realized something very strange, that I did not bury St. Joseph because I don't want to deal with superstition. I also have the feeling that if I tell this story right now to you in the audience, it will not go through.
So there's a little bit of, there's some stition. It's not super, it's just regular.
If I say it out loud, I'm convinced it won't happen. I'm also convinced that if you tell me we're going to just end the segment here, that the good thing will happen. I did the same very thing. This just got brought up this last week. I did the same thing with our parish priest, who is incredibly holy and a great man. Whenever we won the state track meet in 2023, May 5th. On May 3rd, I told him, you might want to come to the track meet on Saturday. He said, why? I said, you just might want to be there. Because I felt like if I said, because we might or are going to win the state championship, we would have lost by 4 points and not won by 4 points, which is what actually happened. So I do have some superstition. So now I'm like, it's the angel and the devil thing again. I hate superstition so much that I won't bury St. Joseph to help sell my house, which would have been incredibly helpful. But at the same time, I want to share this good news with you, but I feel like the good news will fall through if I talk about it out loud.
Okay. Well, your wife received a text, and it pointed to good news.
Yep.
That's our podcast, everybody. Thanks for coming.
I thought you were telling me to continue. We're done?
It's your decision, man. If you want to be superstitious, you can. If you want to leave it and trust it in the heart of the Lord, and we won't call it superstition, that's fine too. If you want to share it, and I'll take it to Jesus as well. I don't know. Good things flow. Like, let's see what happens. The other thing is,
I'm so conflicted.
you can move into your cars. It sounds like they won't run, so at least you could use them to sleep in. Like then you don't have to sell your house. You can have a house and a house car. It'll be great.
Okay, I'm gonna take a risk. I'm gonna do it. My wife got a text a few days ago. I might cry again.
Okay.
My wife got a text a few days ago. Somebody heard through the grapevine. One of the things that my girls are involved in, my wife always drives them because it's a girly thing, right? So I'm usually with my son. We're doing sports stuff and then coming out and hanging out at the house while the girls are doing the girl stuff. And my wife and the girls had to get a ride from another person involved with this girl stuff, the church activity. And they had to ride today because we were down to one car. So I had to take the car. Like the only thing that made sense was either for the girls not to go or to get a ride because I was going to be driving my son all over the place for basketball or something like that.
Yeah.
So it got through the grapevine in our church community that we were without a car just for a day. And somebody else heard about it and said, we have an extra car. We just got a new one. And we've been looking to find a new house for it. We've been looking to find a new family for this car. Newer car than what we have, a lot less miles on it than what we have. And they were like, yeah, there's an issue with like an oil leak, which ironically enough, the car that we're replacing it with also has an oil leak. We can deal with that. We've been dealing with that for quite some time. And they're like, we would like to give it to you for free. And I'm like, everything in my being is like, I don't trust this. I feel like we're getting scammed. I don't know what this is. And so we get on a phone call. My wife calls the number, right? And I've met these people in person. They are real. I have touched the flesh of their hands in a hug, in a shake, what is this called? Handshake.
A handshake. Yep.
Yeah. I almost said high shake, and I'm like, that's a high five or a handshake.
I don't want to disappoint you, but I've got some potentially devastating news. The car is Hitler.
I'm going to pick up Hitler next Tuesday. He's going to live with us now. That was incredible. I did not see that coming. That was very, very good. Half of the audience did, and the other half feel dumb like I do right now. Next Tuesday, we're going to pick up a new car that someone is just gifting to us out of the kindness of their hearts. And what I told them on the phone last night is I have been deeply in prayer about our finances for years, and one of the biggest fears is that I'm not going to be able to, like, we're going to have a car breakdown and just be a one-car family permanently because I can't afford it, right? Like, there's been a genuine fear that I have. And I was like, I've been praying about this for a long time and feeling like I was getting no answers. And I said, I guess he hears me every now and then. And she laughed and smiled. And you could hear her, smiling through the phone, that sort of thing. And just like, it was just a really special moment, and we really needed it. I really like both financially, but just like I was talking earlier about getting the events, like just makes me feel better about myself and about what God's calling me to do and about doing all these things. But it's just like feeling that God finally heard me for once is a really nice feeling, man. Really nice.
And the beauty is he heard you through the community.
Right.
And he's loving you through the community. That's a beautiful thing. So that's awesome. But I have an idea, and I want you just to hear me out because I think I could solve all your problems with this idea. Can I share it with you?
Is it called Bitcoin?
No, it's not Bitcoin. So your family should ask for rides wherever you go. All the time, ask for rides, and then you should amass a fleet of vehicles, which you can either rent out.
This is the exact opposite of your entire segment. Your entire segment was, you need to not use your leadership for bad. You need to have it be used for good. I can't use manipulation to get these things. That's the entire stuff I'm trying to avoid.
But if you just were able to get 20 cars a year and you could sell them or rent them, then you would be set. You'd be set. So you're right. You're absolutely right.
Funny man. I can't do that because tens of people listen to this show and heard this story.
You're sunk. You're cooked.
I am.
Well, praise God. Praise God for that family. Praise God for those hearts.
Little short Hitler next Tuesday is a very funny mental image. So please, for the love of God, everyone, please pray for safety for this family over the next week in that car, that it doesn't get totaled or that they decide that I'm a terrible person, all because I shared it on the podcast. I'm just very grateful. And it was one of those things that I felt like I should share it, but I was terrified too.
I hope that we both get to find ourselves in a place where we're able to gift a vehicle or do something like that to help someone out in the future as well. You know what I mean? I imagine that further down the road, we're both going to be generous in that arena, and to be able to be in a place where we can, it's going to be awesome. So, yeah,
it's cool. It's one of those things that, I'll share. It's one of those things that I, not risk of superstition, but risk of sounding like I'm bragging about myself or whatever. But I agree. And one of the things that I've done for years is support other missionaries, even when I didn't have the money to, because I know how much like we need help, and I did when I was a missionary at the Blaze, need the financial help. But one cool thing, last year we went to a wedding for some mutual friends. It was a great experience. We couldn't, because we had to travel, we did not have money to get them a gift. Like, our presence was our presence kind of thing, right? Like we made the effort to be here. We're very grateful to be here, all these sorts of things, but like, we don't have any money to give you a present. But I actually learned in the past year about this whole thing with weddings that like, it's actually appropriate to give a wedding gift within the first year. I didn't know this. I thought you were just being lazy or whatever. So essentially, if I couldn't give a gift in the past, I just let it go. We were there. They're not going to notice. They're on their honeymoon. They have 8 million gifts. It's fine, right? But I learned about this practice, and I was like, look, we're kind of struggling with money, but one thing that we can do is not go out to eat for, $125 this month so that we can send them a $125 gift card to this restaurant that Sam and I went to while we were traveling for this wedding. And we gave them that. They took it on. They used it as their 1 year anniversary. We waited a whole year because we didn't have the money. They used it as their anniversary, and the amount of joy that I received from that little gift, and that was just a month ago, and now we're getting this huge gift, next week. So just pretty incredible all around. I agree with you, and I will absolutely smile next Tuesday, not only because I'm getting the keys to a new car, but also because I will imagine little tiny baby Hitler sitting in the back of the car on the way home.
And then put some holy water on it. Maybe that's where you put the statue of St. Joseph.
I will absolutely put St. Joseph in that car because I still have that statue that I have not used for any purposes.
Good.
All right, Chris, this was awesome. I love podcasting. It's been a whole month. I had a lot to say.
Glad to be back, Taylor. Good to see you.
All right, I'll be back in a week. He'll be back in a month or next week. It remains to be seen. See ya. Thanks for enjoying today's episode. I hope that you had a blast. Did not see all the Hitler references coming today. That was a joy for the both of us. We hope that you enjoyed your time here with us as well. Make sure you check out everything else we have going on over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Forte Catholic. We've got full episodes of this podcast. We've got talks. We even have a talk about the desert in this Lenten season in our, what did we call that series? Our home retreats or something. Living room retreats. That's what it was. We've got all sorts of stuff over there. Hope that you can check it out and, just kind of turn that YouTube on, have it playing in the background. It'll really help us out. Love you guys. See you next week. Bye.